Here at Be Freaking Awesome, we believe that life is too short to be anything less than extraordinary. Join us as we explore what it means to live authentically, grow continuously, and have a blast while doing it. Let's get started.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I'm Angela Belford, one of your hosts. My co-host, Sami, you'll notice is not here with us because she is on a sudden maternity leave. Any of you that have ever adopted out of the foster care system know that when it's time to go, you go. And so we're very delighted, and I'm sure over the next few weeks we will be sharing that story with you guys as that chapter begins. Today I am joined by my new friend, Massimo Backus. Welcome, Massimo. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Angela, I got to start by saying congratulations to Sami, because this news just came hot off the presses, and it's very, very exciting, and I'm grateful and appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. And as you and I have connected, the connective tissue around our early conversations is this notion of what is this idea of self-love, and what role does it play in our lives as adults, as professionals, as leaders? It's an uncomfortable thing. It even kind of feels weird in your mouth. Self-love, even when you say it, it's kind of, I think is like a pretty common visceral reaction. And yet it's undeniable when you begin that practice, or you speak to people that have had that practice. The benefits of it are undeniable. And I feel very fortunate that I've been one of those people that have gotten past the discomfort of the mouthfeel of saying self-love, self-compassion, have integrated it into all aspects of my work and life. And it is now a guiding principle in all the work that I do as an executive and leadership coach.
And so much so that you actually wrote a book, right? Human first, leader second. What inspired you to write a book?
I have my own stumbles through my career that led me to being confronted with the opportunity to surrender and say, I'm not the expert, actually. I don't have all the answers. Let me let go of the need to be perfect and be in control, and see what I can learn when I really let that go. And that's how I was introduced to the concept of self-compassion. And when I first discovered it, it was an epiphany for me. It was revelatory. It changed, every relationship in my life, most specifically because it changed the relationship to myself. And after having my own practice in self-compassion for a few years, I began sharing it with my clients, not, forcing the medicine on them, but in opportunities where it felt appropriate to share. And lo and behold, after each of them would experience it and begin a practice of their own, they would come to me and they would say, Mas, this is amazing. What is this thing we're doing? And where can I learn more about it? And as I directed them to literature and different resources, as great as they were, I found that they oftentimes weren't speaking the language of the audience that I work with. They weren't speaking to an executive who has built their career on the narrative that I have to be hard on myself to succeed, or the fact that I am so critical of myself and other people is why I'm successful, that's my competitive edge. And these books weren't necessarily resonating with them as much. And I saw a gap in the market. I thought, these people need to get this message, but it needs to come from somebody who can speak their language and someone who's walked that path and can empathize with all of the reasons why you want to dismiss the notion of being kind to yourself, and try and walk alongside them and say, try it out, try this uncomfortable thing out just for 5 minutes, and see if you notice something different, and see if the people around you notice something different. And so my hope with the book and my work is to be an addition to the research and literature that is out there about this, and inviting more people to the party. Because I guess the two things we know for certain are death and taxes. And we know that at death, there's only one person that's going to be there with us, and it's ourselves. And so our life, I think our life purpose is to figure out, how do we create a loving relationship with ourselves? That's it. It's so simple, and yet it's so complex.
I love that.
And I think it's the hardest thing that we can do.
For sure. I had a kind of a reverse. Well, I don't know. When my book was published, one of my executive coach clients was going to take an international trip, and I said, "Hey, would you take the this is the edited copy, but it's not final, last grammar checks, but beta reader." And his message was, "Oh, this is what we've been doing." He literally, like, and which was so affirming that, like, what I had put him through, he now had a text to follow and to follow the methodology. And I was definitely a skeptic of this idea of self-love and self-compassion. I would say I was 100% on board with the, like, push yourself to be better and harder. And sometimes I read the book I published in 2017 and I'm like, you were writing this stuff and I don't know that you actually got it. And maybe it's like that at every stage of our development. Like, when we get it at a new level, then we go, oh no, but now I really get it. It'll be interesting to me in 5 years to be like, oh no, now I really understand the self-love thing. So maybe I've been on a journey, but the idea of how you can be compassionate to yourself, it just wasn't a goal for me. Like, my goal was like, I want to be less judgmental. I want to be less angry. I want to be kinder to my husband. I want to have a good relationship with my husband. So I want to be kinder to him. So I want to be less judgmental. I want to be nicer and love him better. And it is so counterintuitive, or at least it was for me. And maybe because I'm one of those people you talk about that was type A and thought in Excel spreadsheets and, very hard driven. And it was so counterintuitive that the first step was to, like, you got to love yourself. And as I've been on this journey for the last, I would say, 4 years, I have to work nearly as hard to not judge others. And when I notice that I'm judging others about something, I'm like, ooh, how am I like that? Because when people annoy me, often it's because there's something in me that I'm annoyed by. And people are just a mirror. Like, it's like everybody's walking around and they're just a mirror of how I think about myself. And yet this feels like crazy talk. And I'm with you on the other authors. They were always so woo-woo, so, like, meditative, and let's go on a 9-day silent retreat and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah. And Angela, I feel like a lot of times you read these books and it's like someone's kind of talking at you, or almost scolding you, like, well, you really should, eat healthier, and you got to get your 8 hours of sleep. And I come at this from a place of, I'm not some guru on the mountaintop. I'm in the trenches trying to figure this out too. And what you said about reading your book years later and realizing, well, maybe I have matured in this way. I've experienced these moments of feeling like a hypocrite after, publishing a book on self-compassion, even though, there are days and weeks that go by where I have not done a great job of practicing it.
Yeah.
But I always come back to, all roads lead back to, it is my relationship to myself that impacts all of the relationships. I also want to have a loving relationship and supportive relationship with my wife. And when I don't, there's typically something going on with the way that I'm feeling about myself.
100%.
More than what is happening in the outer world. And when you said that everyone's just a mirror for us, when you extrapolate that out and you think, if we're walking through the world and everyone is a mirror to our own lived experience, and that's true for everyone else, then it certainly takes the pressure off. Everyone's thinking about me. They're not. They're thinking about themselves, just like we are, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of, like, I say one of the metaphors I use in my book is the idea that we have headphones that filter what we hear, and we have glasses. I love pink glasses. Then when you look at the blue sky, everything's purple and fun. And right. So we have these glasses and these headphones of how we see the world. And one of my favorite examples, a friend of mine called me years ago and he said, you need to talk to your best friend because she is, she wants to, when we come back to the States after this deployment, she wants to quit her job and she wants a brand new car. And he goes, we just can't afford a brand new car. And I go, oh, that doesn't sound like her. And so I said, well, put her on the phone. This is back in the day when you had hand the phone around, whatever. Anyway, it's been a minute ago.
The house of the court, yeah.
Get on the other extension. Anyway, so she goes, no. I said that I want a late model, low mileage car with a warranty. And I go, well, that doesn't sound like a brand new car. And he goes, I said, tell him to pick up the other line. This is really, the story gets lost for new people. Anyway, but like, put him on speaker. And he goes, the only way you can do that is with a brand new car. And I said, that's not true. You can buy a car that has 30,000 miles that still has warranty left on it. But his worldview, the way he saw the world, he could only accept what she was hearing and translate it into brand new car. And literally she was not saying the words and he was translating it into new words from his perspective. And I love the example because it's meaningless, right? There was not a good guy and a bad guy in this, right? But what happens is that sometimes in relationships, I will say something and somebody goes, you said this thing. And I'm like, I actually didn't. Or they will say something to me and I will say, you said this thing. And they're like, that is not at all what I said. But when we hear it through our own filters of I'm not enough, I don't have what it takes, brand new car comes out, right?
Yeah. I mean, this all maps to Chris Argyris's work around the ladder of inference and the skill, the habit that we all need to develop and being able to come to, like, what are the actual facts? Fact is, I'm wearing a blue shirt. Fact is, I'm sitting here nodding, we're having this conversation. But as we're having this conversation, you might be conjuring all sorts of stories up based on the details that you select of the picture.
Yes.
This person's not engaged. They looked off screen. Oh, they must not be interested. I'm being boring. No one's listening to me. I don't matter. It's like, whoa. I mean, maybe there was a gardener that just walked outside their window, or, there was a sound. But we make stuff up constantly. And it's very liberating to at least recognize my mind is going to make things up. That's not bad. But I do need to suspend judgment of those things. I need to go, oh, isn't that interesting? I had this thought. Is that true? Do I believe that? Does the evidence support it? And because we can hold on to a story for so long that it becomes our reality, it becomes our worldview, it becomes our belief, it guides our decisions, it guides our continued judgments. And when you step back from it, you go, wait a second, I'm the only one who's holding this worldview. And so if I drop it, I was just talking to a client yesterday about this, is holding a worldview that they are being judged all the time about something. She was able to get to a point of imagining, what would my life be like if I just dropped this worldview, since no one else is carrying it? Your whole world changes.
Yeah.
It doesn't change, and no one else is going to be any different, but your experience of them is fundamentally different. Wow. What how do you put value on that to change your worldview in a moment, because you can let go of these stories, but you have to be able to identify that they're stories in the first place. And for me, that took years of practice, because we start writing stories at a very young age, and our young minds are very creative, Angela,
Yeah.
And we can come up with pretty elaborate tales around who we are and who we aren't, who we can be and who we can't be, and what makes us lovable and what doesn't make us lovable. And that can be daunting to go back and review the tomes of the stories that we have created.
Yeah, well, because Bessel van der Kolk defines trauma as anything that happens to us that our brain can't make sense of. So I hypothesize that 10-year-old me, there was a lot of the world I couldn't make sense of. So 10-year-old me couldn't make sense of not being invited to the sleepover. So it was traumatic to 10-year-old me. And then the parents around me are going, oh, who cares about them? They don't know. You don't know. Blah, blah, blah. Discounting my feelings. What you feel is not valid. So then you make up all kinds of stories to try to make sense of it, because that's what our brain has to do. When in fact, Sally just had a small bedroom, and so she could only invite 3 people. She wanted to invite you, but we don't know that. And so I think that sometimes people hear this like, oh, I have to review the tomes of stories that I've created. I don't know if that's 100% the methodology I use. And I don't know, I'm not saying you are proposing this. We're not proposing 15, 20 years in therapy to lay there and talk about all the things. I'm talking about like when you come up against something. And I think what you propose is when you come up against something, you realize, I think that the whole world is judging me, pausing and saying, is that helping you? Is it true? Is there evidence to support it? Does holding that worldview help you? And if it doesn't, is there something else that might be more helpful to you and make you more kind? So this is not a proposal, especially those of you that are longtime listeners and heard a recent episode where the guest hypothesized we shouldn't even go to therapy. Disagree. And I also agree that you don't need to be in therapy for 30 years necessarily. Now, if I have a car, I'm going to always get my oil changed every 3 months. And so in the same way, my brain may continue to need some maintenance on an ongoing basis, right? But that may or may not need physical or some professional intervention.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that we need to go back and review all of that. But I do think we need to have enough self-compassion to recognize that it exists.
Absolutely.
And open ourselves up to the idea that maybe there is some wisdom that could come from a review of that. You know, are there things that I've been holding on to for a long time that it is time to let go of? And just in creating the conditions of feeling safe within ourselves to do that, having self-trust, those things, they emerge. You know,
do.
I think there were many years for me, Angela, where I had a pretty gray recollection of my childhood.
Sure.
You know, there was no clear pictures, and the pictures that did come up, they were kind of gray and muted. And I was like, I don't know. It's not like I blocked it out. I just didn't have all that many memories of it. And yet over time, like certain things too, they emerge, and like there's a little bit more color in that picture now, and I can actually kind of see the shape and the outline. And I can remember how I was feeling in that moment, and I can acknowledge, again, as a 10-year-old, as you said, that was a pretty traumatic experience, and I can empathize to say, yeah, that must have been tough. And a little bit of a worldview was created, a little bit of a belief system was created. But in my book, I talk about this concept of WIMPs, well-intentioned misinformed protectors, which is basically the way that we have developed these defense mechanisms and coping strategies that we did when we were very young. I need to be perfect to be loved or respected. I need to be in control all of the time. I'm an imposter. They're always going to find me out. These are like the very common types of WIMPs. Well-intentioned misinformed, meaning the idea of trying to strive to be perfect to protect ourselves is well-intentioned, but it's misinformed because as adults, as professionals, we don't need protecting. We have enough lived experience. We know what's right. We have our core values. We can trust ourselves. But if we let these WIMPs take control, and we're driven by the need for perfection or control or being defensive or people-pleasing and not having boundaries, then we're reliant on this really outdated strategy. But let's not vilify it, because it has worked. And that's the reason why we keep doing these things, because they did work for a long time. And lo and behold, at some point as adults, we start to realize, yeah, they've worked, but boy, they've come at a cost. Being a workaholic, needing to be perfect all the time, it comes at a cost. And then you start to realize, well, instead of vilifying this mechanic that I had developed, let me empathize with where it comes from. So when it emerges next, I don't have to try and kill it. I can just say, I don't need to do that. I get to choose. You know, for me, I was defensive all the time. That was my coping mechanism. I was defensive, and I needed to make sure that everybody knew that I was smart and that I was talented. What an obnoxious person to be around. It led to some success. It led to a lot of challenges too. But letting that go and realizing, oh, that was my WIMP. That was my defense mechanism. That I needed the world to see me perfect, because that's when I felt like I was safe. And I realized I'm not perfect. I'll never be perfect. No one ever viewed me as perfect to begin with. So was I even successful in doing it?
Right. Everybody else is in on it that you're not perfect. And they're just waiting for you to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, no one is. I
I
did a keynote yesterday on this topic of self-compassion and leadership. And sometimes when you send slides to somebody and they open up the PowerPoint on their computer, the formatting gets weird.
right.
Well, lo and behold, around slide 6 or 7, this happened. And I'm in front of this auditorium of 150 leaders, and I noticed a typo on the slide. And at that moment, I was talking about this notion of how do we reconcile our relationship of being an imposter and this need for perfection with self-compassion. So I just called it out. I said, does anybody else see the typo on the slide here? Because, my imposter syndrome just went through the roof. But I also have a practice of self-compassion. And I reminded myself that this happens and it's unfortunate. And then I asked the audience, how many of you have been doing a presentation and there was a typo on your slide? And every hand in the auditorium went up and we all laughed at this notion. Now, it's not something I'm proud of. I certainly wish that there wasn't a typo on the slide. Oddly enough, I went back and checked my copy of it and it wasn't there. So I have no idea what happened. But just the invitation that I made there to say, am I going to beat myself up or am I going to humanize this as a moment? It's like, this happens. And does that typo deteriorate from our overall experience? Are you going to see me as less a value keynote speaker here as a result of this? Or is this more valuable because we just shared a human experience together?
That's what I was thinking, is what a great connection point for everyone that was in that audience to go, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And that sense of belonging in that. That's beautiful.
It was powerful. It was powerful. There was not many dry eyes in the house at the end of it.
I love that. That's wonderful. I enjoy most minutes of my ADD. And one of them is I can get a little bit obsessive. But I just had this, I want to try on a metaphor, and we may edit this out because it's going to mess up the flow. But as you were talking about the strategies that we use and the idea that we shouldn't beat ourselves up for using those strategies because they worked for us. And I've heard this idea and I've come to embrace it reluctantly. That was one that was really hard for me to accept because I'm like, no. And I've now learned if you knew better, you would do better. And then when I have a moment now, I'll be like, okay, well, if you weren't tired and hungry and stressed out, you do, because if I do know better and I don't, then it's like, well, now what do I do with this idea, right? But there's still glitches. And so for some reason, what popped in my brain was the idea of back in the day when my uncle, he bought the first cell phone, which was in a bag that was attached to his car. Now, if he continued to this day, 40 years later, trying to use that bag phone to continue to communicate, we can see how obviously that would be ineffective. And we can also see how dumb it would be to judge him because he did use a bag phone originally, even though the bag phone was like, he was cutting edge.
Yeah, it was state of the art. Yeah.
It was state of the art, right? Let's go watch the Miami Vice. Like, we had some, like, a bag phone. And I'm going to have to put an age warning on this podcast. But, like, we wouldn't judge somebody that was doing the latest, greatest thing by using a bag phone back then any more than we should judge ourselves because we picked up a tool, a coping tool that worked for us. We figured out that perfectionism solved some problems for us. We tried hard. We worked hard. We did all the things. Those worked for us. But just like the bag phone wouldn't work today, those same coping skills, it's okay to let them go and to continue to upgrade. We continue to buy the latest iPhone. Why are we not continuing to upgrade our brain? We've got to keep upgrading. If you have to upgrade your phone every 2 years, then maybe every 2 years, brain might need a little bit of an upgrade as well.
I love that metaphor. And yeah, I think we should always be doing a review and thinking about how we can upgrade our brain and our worldview. And, these coping strategies, these WIMPs, they were created by us when we were children. They were created by a child. Children are creative, but it's a child. It had limited lived experience. It didn't have a full understanding of the world around us. So what do you expect? You know what I mean? And, Carl Jung talks about our relationship to the ego isn't necessarily ego death, but it's individuation. It's when we are able to separate ourselves from the ego and then we can integrate it.
Mm-hmm.
And these wimps aren't different than us. Like they are a part of our psychology. Our ego is not, we're not going to kill our ego. Our ego is us. It's one and the same. So when we can get to a place where we're not trying to be rid ourselves of these things, but we can integrate them with compassion, it takes the sting out of it. It takes the control back. So I still find myself getting defensive at times, but I catch it and I go, oh, I'm being defensive. What is going on here? I'm not feeling seen. I don't feel safe in this environment. I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling some low self-esteem, and therefore I'm socially comparing, which is building on that self-esteem. Is that helpful? No, it's not. So what are the things I know that are helpful when I'm feeling less than, or I'm feeling unworthy? These are all tools that we have that are available. But if we just try and, shut off the valve on these things and say like, nope, I'm going to kill my ego, or, I'm going to do the shadow work and it'll all be done. It's like, no, it's always going to be there. And that's part of like the vibrancy of being human. Like we don't get to live life just with experiencing happiness and joy. Like we're going to get sadness and despair. You get the whole thing, baby,
Mm-hmm. I also talk about the idea, that was because I call it the critical voice or the self-critic. And I first tried like kick it to the curb, like get out of here. I don't want to hear your crap anymore. And you know what happens is that it gets louder and louder and louder. And this is how panic attacks happen. This is how things go really poorly. And so I think that we absolutely have to befriend it.
Yes.
And really bring it over to our side. I say that it should no longer be the chairman of the board, but it should be the chairman emeritus, right? Because if you're negative critic, when you decide I'm going to forget all this, I'm going to sell my house, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to go build an underwater basket weaving business, and you live in Kansas, and if the critic inside of you says, hold on a minute, wait, let's think this through, it can actually be helpful if you will allow it to give you the message that it is afraid of. Now, that doesn't mean it should drive, but you should like go, hey, I was looking at Google Maps and it says there's a police car ahead. We should slow down. There's a pothole ahead. The bridge is ahead. There's still an opportunity for us to learn from it if we just don't make it the driver. So I'm with you, like integrate it, like add it to the board of directors that is giving us guidance in our brain, but do not make it the chairman. It's done its time. It's served its purpose. Give it a trophy and say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your many years of service. We're going to step you over here to the emeritus role. Don't go away. Be helpful. And it's been interesting because I am shocked at how much more helpful my inner critic is. Because now my inner critic, when I start to get defensive, I think is the voice that goes, hey, remember how you hate to go and apologize when you've been a jerk? How about you just shut your mouth so that you don't have to apologize for being a jerk? How about you just not be a jerk and then like calm down? And I think it is that inner critic that has become much more of a coach for me. That is what is helping me to then show up in the world the way I want to show up.
I completely agree, Angela. I mean, when you talk about befriending it, it's about being in relationship.
Yep.
And sometimes you can say, hey, do you have anything helpful to say? Great, I'd like to hear it. If you don't have anything helpful to say, then I'm just going to ask for you to sit this one out.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
That's how I treat the wimps in my life now. It's like, hey, let's be in a relationship. If you have something of value, I'm all ears. But if you're just going to be over here, bitching and moaning about something or trying to tear me down, we don't really need that. But I realize that it's a lifelong roommate. It's always going to be there. But we do have some house rules. You got to clean up your dishes. When the dishwasher's clean, you got to put the dishes away. There's some things that we're gonna have some boundaries around. But you get to live here, man. That's good.
I love it. What other helpful tips can you leave us with on as we begin this journey of self-compassion?
At the core of self-compassion, it's about three things. It's about being aware of what we need and what our emotions are. And that is a regular check-in throughout the day. Hey, how am I doing? What do I need? What am I feeling right now? And I invite people to increase their emotional fluency, which is what is the vocabulary that we have to describe how we're feeling? There isn't just one flavor of sadness. There's, despair. There's doubt. There's misery. It takes all different, different flavors. And the same thing is with positive emotions. But can we increase our fluency of understanding what it is that we're feeling? And what does that feeling indicate as a need that is being met or a need that's not being met? The second is around acceptance, that I am feeling this way and that I'm not alone in that. Compassion connects us to other people, and self-compassion is the same thing. So I might be aware that I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed. I've taken on too much work because the perfectionist was driving me. The acceptance would be, I have put myself in this position because I let the perfectionist drive me. And that's frustrating. But I'm not alone in that frustration because other people do this too. And just by acknowledging that other people have felt that their perfection has gotten the better of them, that they've over-indexed themselves on work, that they also get frustrated and sad with themselves, it takes the pressure out of it. It's like, yeah, that's a human experience. And then the third step is about accountability, which is great. Now that I know this information, what am I going to do with it? And that could be an act of self-kindness, which is I'm going to make sure I get really good sleep tonight. I'm going to go for a walk midday. I'm going to take this meeting on the phone and walk while we have a conversation. Or it could be a courageous act of kindness, which could be, I'm going to set a boundary. I'm going to start saying no. I'm going to call that person back that I said yes to and have the difficult conversation and say, you know what? My eyes were bigger than my stomach and I'm not able to deliver on this. Those are tough things to do. Recently, I had to step down from a board position, and I love the mission of the school and what this school is about. It's a school for students with dyslexia and other language-based learning differences, like myself. I believe so much in the mission, and yet I had subscribed myself, and I had to find places where I could make space. And unfortunately, that was the space that I had to do that. Very difficult decision. It was the right thing to do. That was an act of self-compassion.
I love that. So many times we think I've said yes, so now it's forever a yes. And I have a very similar board experience where I said yes, and I was like, these are the things I'm willing to do. And someone else on a committee was like, but I need you to do X, Y, Z. And I was like, well, this is what I'm able to do. Oh, well, great. Then I'm going to find somebody else, another volunteer to do all these things and I'm like, but you are going to make more work for me. Because they had literally recruited a volunteer that then I had to train, and that person dropped out after getting trained one time. And so we had to have she said, can we have coffee? And I'm like, yeah, can we go for a walk? And we had to sit, and it was so uncomfortable. It was so uncomfortable to talk through the why. Why was I feeling, and I did not show up in the way I like to be. I was snappy. I was defensive. I was rah, rah, rah. And then when I tried to apologize and explain, then she was rah, rah, rah. And it was awful. And we stayed with it. And I said, I am committed to this relationship. I'm committed to this relationship. Let's keep going. And so we just kept, luckily we both left enough time. And so we sat across on a picnic table and was like, when you do this, this is how I feel. And I don't know why I feel this way, but this is what's going on with me. And this is what's going on with you. And what if we do this? And how about this? And if we try this? And if we say this? And I didn't put down a boundary. We kind of negotiated our roommate rules on this committee, say, well, what if we do it like this? Or can we try this thing before we go this way?
Angela, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Based on that experience and what you learned from it, what would you do differently the next time in managing yourself?
I'm not sure I would, because this is what I told her is I said, you know what? really great relationships will have conflict at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is unfortunate that you and I had conflict, but what I love is that you and I both have such deep love and respect for one another that we sat in the conflict and we leaned into the conflict and we came out stronger on the other side. I don't have to think about how to manage myself now because we made sure we had deep trust in that. We worked together. Like I said, I didn't set a boundary. She and I talked through, and I'm like, we tested out different ways, and I'm like, how about we test this for 2 months and then check back in and see if it still works, because we only meet once a month. And so it was actually the uncomfortableness of it was very good for us, and we are so much stronger relationship because we now have had conflict. We didn't break, we mended, came back together, and we restored that relationship and reconnected. And it's, I think so often, sometimes people feel boundaries and they think, oh, well, conflict is bad. All conflict is bad. And I should be out and I should chant. And it's like, yeah, but man, the richest relationships I have been through some form of conflict, and we made it to the other side.
I think that conflict gets a bad rap. It's treated like one of those bad 4-letter words. And it's just two opposing points of view, but they're aligned around a shared outcome. Conflict comes to a place that people want. They want the same thing, but how they want to get there, how they're viewing it are different. That's all that it is. And, I view that as an opportunity to try and create what is the common ground and continue to align on what is the outcome that we both want. What is that shared outcome?
Yes.
And what are the things that we both believe are important and valuable about what we're trying to accomplish? But it's true, the tension and pressure in relationships, when you can sit with it and push through it and get to the other side, that's where trust is earned. Earned solid trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you could leave our listeners with one thing, Moss, what would it be?
I would encourage people to start listening to that voice that is judgmental and critical. It's often a voice of comparison, and it's a voice that is hungry for external validation and feeds off of self-esteem. And the more that you listen to it, it'll help you improve your relationship with it. Like any relationship, listening is really important. So start listening to that voice and get curious about what is it trying to tell me? What is the agenda that this voice has? What are the concerns that this voice has? And respond to it with a new voice, a self-compassionate voice that is not reliant on your self-worth being externally contingent, that isn't based on self-esteem and needing the world to see you a certain way, but is based on the way that you see yourself as somebody who is worthy and whole and good enough for no other reason other than you're here, you get to live your life. And, we can go through the day and we can select data that tells us we are living in a time of catastrophe and the world's on fire and, we're all in danger. Or you can walk through your day and you can select data that says, what a miracle Mother Nature is. And what a miracle is that we're this ball flying through space, dropping around the sun day in and day out. The people in our lives that we love and that love us back. Like what a miraculous thing that we get to enjoy and practice a sense of gratitude about that. And I'm not saying this in a Pollyanna way. I balance both of these things. I am pragmatic. I am a realist. But I also know if I continue to eat that junk food of only seeing the negative, it's like going to a bag of Doritos. You never open a bag of Doritos and just eat one. The food is designed to get you to keep going back for more. And when you're done, you don't feel like satiated. You don't feel necessarily good about it. There's probably a little bit of regret that goes with it. And I'm saying self-compassion is like eating whole nutrient-dense foods. That at the end of that workout, you don't go to the ice cream shop and ruin what you just spent on the treadmill, but you're eating something healthy and you're like, I'm making good choices and I get to feel good about myself because of the choices that I'm making.
I love that. I love that so much. And there's so many, I probably have said I love that 50,000 times in this episode, but I feel like we have found each other for a reason. I'm super glad to have connected with you. If others want to connect with you, tell us where they can find you.
I'm active on LinkedIn, Massimo Backus, and my website is my name as well. And if you're interested about self-compassion, particularly in the context of what it means to be a leader who can actually be kind to themselves, and how do you do that without your performance dropping off, but in fact improving your performance, check out my book, Human First, Leader Second: How Self-Compassion Outperforms Self-Criticism.
All the places that you can buy the book. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you hanging out with us, especially all of you guys on YouTube. Come on, our YouTube channel is growing. We're everywhere. LinkedIn,
Thank you,
Instagram.
Angela.
Yes.
This was a great conversation.
Thank you. And until next time, everyone, I hope that you go be freaking awesome.